What are the trends for the mattress industry in 2021? We'll be talking about that with Ling, principal of Posh+Lavish, on episode 14 of the Pete Primeau Show. The show is brought to you by my free Facebook group, Pete Primeau Sales and Marketing. Find out more at peteprimeau.com. This week's guest is Ling, a legend in the industry. Kurt not only is a principal of Posh+Lavish, but he also founded the company Pure Latex Bliss, and he was instrumental in the development of the non-flip mattress when he was at Simmons. A lot of people will just say that Kurt invented it, and Kurt is so humble that he will always correct people and say, no, I helped to lead a team that developed the no-flip industry, the no-flip mattress, which actually changed the industry. So, Kurt, good morning. I am a little bit awestruck here. This is our first time talking, and you're a legend in the industry, and you're making me a little bit nervous with your greatness here, brother.
Well, don't think that at all. And I enjoy being on your show. I love to tell our story, and it should be a fun time.
So let's start. Obviously you're an innovator, and let's, where the best question I could ask you is, for somebody that wants to be more creative, where do you find inspiration? You've created so much, and I guess that's why you're kind of legendary in this industry. You've created so much at different times. How do you find the inspiration for all this creativity, or were you just born naturally creative?
Well, I don't know if it's as much creative as it is curious, really. One of my greatest fun things to do is just to kind of find holes in things. And that sounds odd, but that's exactly what it is. I love to go out and find something that's just, literally a hole waiting to be filled, because there's opportunities in all of those. And that's fun for me. That literally is like a hobby. You look around and you're like, people don't use this the way that it's supposed to be used. Or, just being a good listener goes a long ways, by the way. There's just so many people that constantly have a comment about, boy, I think this should be this way, or isn't it silly that something is this way and it should be the other. And if you listen and you're just curious at all, the next thing you know is you find out that, there's just holes that are meant to be filled. And, sometimes it's creating those holes, I think, but literally, I think if I have an expertise, it's not finding something super creative. It's finding a hole that has to be filled. And in that's an opportunity, whether it be, a mattress that people don't want to flip, or, in the land of luxury these days, just doing something that's actually really different than what everybody else is doing, that has a value equation attached that, helps us, helps helps the consumer, and most importantly, helps the retailer.
Let's talk about that for just a second, Kurt. Is it true that the inspiration for the no flip actually came out of the warranty department, or was that just a story that you guys developed after the fact?
No, I remember this is like 1999, so this is a few years ago. But I met with the warranty crew, and we talked about all sorts of things, everything from handles on beds to, like everything under the sun. But I was just curious. I mean, I was curious what they knew. And the next thing I know, as we do that, we start talking about flipping the mattress. And I'd have really thought about flipping a mattress, mostly because I'd never flipped one in my life, which is kind of funny all by itself, But,
Yeah,
but I was
sure.
listening to these ladies that talk with consumers every single day. And what they were talking about was the things that people broke. And I thought, wow, that's amazing to me. And they started down this path of, there are people that literally wait for their kids to come home for the holidays to help them flip their mattress. I thought, well, wow, can't wait to go home to mom and dad to help them flip their bed. But then it got more interesting that, I mean, they, talked about, the mattress would, they get it up and then it would fall over and it would break a phone when people had landlines back then, or break the alarm clock, or break the ceiling fan, or break the post off a 4-poster bed. And I remember just making a note of that. It was like, like I had never ever flipped a mattress, and I thought I should. But the more fascinating part of it was that wasn't the problem. Is, it wasn't about reminding people to do it often. It wasn't about any of that. It literally was about nobody wants to do this. And I remember doing a research project with a bunch of consumers in a focus group room, saying, what is it about this that you like, and what is it that you don't like? And the easiest thing to say at the beginning of that was 8 out of 8 people in every single one of those groups, nobody wanted to ever flip a mattress. I mean, nobody woke up in the morning and say, I can't wait to flip my mattress this week. And,
Yeah.
From there, the rest is history and it literally is a lot of really important people along the way that helped shape that project, because that sounds like a really simple insight. So you just go make a no flip mattress. And it wasn't that way at all. I mean, if you didn't have the density of foam right in that mattress, and if you didn't have a bottom layer below those coils that wouldn't sink into a foundation, this was not chop the ballot and no flip mattress. It was a whole lot of R&D to get to something that was a great mattress beyond that. But when we finished that whole project, the most interesting thing was, and we didn't get this in the original research, we went out and talked to people and said, here's a mattress, you don't have to flip it. What do you think? And the most fascinating thing to me was we discovered guilt as an emotion, which was just the most unexpected thing to me in the world. There were people that knew they had a body impression, and they didn't blame the mattress because it had a body impression necessarily, or at least first, they actually blamed themselves. And I remember learning a long time ago that emotions actually are much greater sales opportunities than rational thinking. But it was so fascinating to me because, we're talking to people in the first set of focus groups about the rational things about flipping, how often, what do you break, whatever that is. And the next thing you know is we actually present a solution to them and say, you don't have to flip this mattress. And it almost without exception, the first words out of their mouths were, I don't have to feel bad about that anymore. And we were like, wow, where did that come from? Because we never heard it at the beginning. And so, I think we solved a rational problem, but we also solved an emotional issue that nobody even knows they have, and we didn't know they have. It was fascinating. It was great. It's a great
Yeah.
time. Love those years.
Yep. So who are your favorite innovators? Who do you take inspiration from?
Yeah. These days, my favorite innovators are Apple, Dyson, and Tesla. And I mean, you can give Apple lots of credit for lots and lots and lots of reasons, but every time they introduce a new iPhone and you go get people standing on the street, in lines in front of an Apple store to spend $800 or $1,000, for something that we literally used to get for free if we signed up for a contract, like, A plus to them, both in terms of product and in terms of retail. But the craziest part about that one to me isn't the fact that you have people that spend $700 or $800 for a phone. It's that they do it every few years. And, I mean, that is the world of retail. We have friends that are car dealers, and it's the same thing. It's not about selling somebody one thing one time. It's about how do you get somebody to buy something, be satisfied, come back and do it over and over again. And one of the things that you got to give Apple a lot of credit for, whether you're an Apple fan or not an Apple fan, is they're just brilliant at raising the bar in technology. They're brilliant at raising a price point. I mean, if any of us a year or 10 years ago thought we'd pay $1,000 for a phone, wait in line for it for 2 hours, and come back and replace it 2 years later, I think we'd all be shaking our heads. And yet every time they introduce a phone, there's everybody at. So the Dyson, I love Dyson because, I think of vacuuming as absolutely a chore. And what they did that is brilliant is they know there are people that actually enjoy vacuuming their house. And, they've got people that'll pay $700 for a vacuum cleaner. So, same kind of thing. They completely reinvent what it looks like. They reinvent the way it works. But what they're really brilliant at is they know that there's a customer that enjoys vacuuming and will spend a lot of money because of it. And that's just brilliant on so many fronts. Go tap into somebody that enjoys what most people do as or think of as drudgery, and get them to spend a lot of money for it because it's better and it's worth it, and they wouldn't have it any other way. And then are so incredibly brand loyal that they don't want anything else. And then the last one's Tesla. I, I'm 56, and the funniest part of that is I remember being 16 years old and getting a driver's license, and I remember being 18 years old, and you just couldn't wait for a car to start up and have some sound. And I always call it rev up or vroom. It's like it's gonna make some noise, and we're gonna take off. And you know, it, what they've done is brilliant. Every young person that we know aspires to own a Tesla. It has no rev, it has no vroom, but it does drive itself, and that's George Jetson, and it's brilliant. And the same story. They're not shy about asking money for something that's incredibly innovative and changing all the rules. Really, I I,
Yeah.
I kind of like cars, and I look at their cars and I'm like, I don't find them really attractive, honestly. And it doesn't matter because everybody that I know that's less than 30 years old, that's what they aspire to own, no matter what they have. So it's fascinating to me. I love them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Listen, we got to get to the 2021 um, piece of it, but I
Yeah,
can't get there without asking you a few more questions. So,
sure.
what is, listen, probably when you launched the non flip, you changed the industry. You bring in latex into people's life. And I know that you don't like that word. You guys say rubber. Bringing rubber into people's lives that is better to sleep on, that is less chemicals, more support, more comfort. What is the secret to launching in your
Yeah,
mind?
yeah.
I mean, you've launched successfully companies, products, all kinds of things. How do you launch successfully? What is the key?
Well, I think from a product standpoint, Pete, the key is the product actually has to be different. And I don't mean a little bit different. It has to be really different. I mean, to launch something well, the more different the product is, the more unique the product is, the easier the launch is going to be. With a product that actually really is unique, I think you actually have to have a benefit that's as unique, but a really easy story to tell. I mean, I think sometimes where we get into trouble is we come up with something that's very different with a new benefit, but it's actually a really hard story to tell. And hard story to tell is almost like we'll cross that one off our list, because if people can't easily understand it, then the chance that it's going to be a great launch is just low. And then no different than the stories we just told with Beauty Rest. At the end of the day, you know, we have to tell stories. I mean, we have to tell you what the problem is, what your problem is, what somebody else's problem is. Um, I was told a long time ago that people relate to relevant things, but sometimes they don't even know what their things are. So if you can find the relevant things that they want, then the next thing you know is, the rest of it's easy. So if you have a product that's actually, I like to use the word different platform. I'm not sure that that's exactly right, but something that's not a tweak, or not a version, or not another iteration, but something that's actually really different. If you've got that and you can tell that story, and it's an easy story to understand, the next thing you know is the launch is fantastic. And I love innovation. I love bringing a new idea to life. I actually, the adventure of that is like the greatest sporting event that's on TV to me. There's just something fascinating about, here's a whole world that's waiting for something to happen, and the next thing you know is you come up with something that really is different. And what follows the really is different is something that, boom, takes off because it was so easy for people to understand.
Yeah, one of the most striking things in my career was walking down a hallway, and the first time I saw Pure Tele Bliss, I about fell over. I had never seen anything that looked like that,
Yeah.
and I immediately jumped into the showroom. I announced myself and I said, I'm sorry, I'm a rep for blah, blah, blah. But could I just lay on this mattress? I've never seen a mattress that looks like it. And the gentleman said, sure. And I said, I've never laid on anything that feels like this. So one of the things that I think is really important, you know, in America, and maybe everybody in every country feels this way, but I know that in America, sometimes they're ready to be disappointed. I did
Mm,
not anticipate that mattress to feel as good and as different as it did.
yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had probably been in the industry for about 20 years at that point, over 20 years at that point, and I said, "It's just gonna feel like every other mattress. It's not gonna feel
Yeah.
that much
As
different."
they all do.
And so and my lord, it felt so different, and I'm like, "Okay, it looks different,
Yeah.
and it feels
Feels different.
different, and it is different, and there's easy to tell stories to communicate those differences."
Yeah.
And, what I call it is the rubber meeting the road.
Yeah.
It delivers on the promise, and I think that is huge. And so that leads me up to this, and guys, I promise I'm gonna get to 2021, but I got to do a quick commercial. This show is available as a podcast on your favorite platform. Find the links to my show on all the platforms by going to peteprimeau.com. That's PETEPRIMEAU.com. I know that's a lot for the way it sounds. Imagine sending a kid to kindergarten with the name Primo. Anyway, I I got a little carried away there. So I am so curious about this. Why did you start Posh and Lavish? And I have to say this. I have friends in this industry that I respect immensely. One of them is Jeff Giannakovo of Gardner's Mattress and More in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And not only is he a big fan of Posh and Lavish as a product that delivers superior results to the end consumer, but he's a huge fan of you personally as a human being, which I think is important. But bigger than that, and we'll kind of save this for later, but I have to say it while I'm thinking about it. He has bought into your mission, and I want you to talk about that later. Uh, the mission for your company, but what was the initial inspiration for Posh and Lavish? I mean, you know, it's a very successful company. I can't find a way to compete against it as a mattress rep. Anybody that asks me, Pete, what should I do? If you can get it, if they'll sell you, put it on. It's going to
Yeah.
make you money. But let me
Yeah.
tell you something. They don't sell everybody.
No, they
They
don't.
actually understand the word partnership, which is misused in our industry. A lot of times, vendors believe partnership is you do what we tell you and sit down and shut up, right? And and the dealer thinks that, hey, partnership is I just buy what I want, and I'll just keep bringing on 100 other brands, and who cares how much business they get either. So on both sides, there's
Yeah.
enough guilt to go around. But why did you start the company?
Well, we started because when we kind of looked around, this is over 5 years ago, but we looked around and there was such an incredible opportunity in luxury. And
Yeah,
we've kind of played in lots of different segments of this business, or I have over the last few years, the last 20 years really. Um, but the idea of converting a customer to luxury is such an important thing in the business. And when we looked at the landscape of luxury, we are like, I don't think there's any luxury brands that are like wickedly or wildly different. And there were a couple of them that were really good, but until you got to the uber end of the marketplace, where you're talking about $20,000 beds, there weren't different platforms, and I'll go back and use that word. So
Yeah.
we went out and tried to find what that is. And I'll start off by saying, probably more than half of our dealers are not in ultra high income neighborhoods. So it's not a demographic thing. It literally is, if you show luxury mattresses to everybody, how many people can you convert? And we actually think that's as key today in retail as anything. If you've got that right, you thrive. If you don't have that right, it looks like you survive. And so a luxury strategy for people was huge. And we just said, you know what? I think you have to be able to have something beyond mid-level of price points that everybody else sells in town. And so we set some core values as we started with Posh+Lavish. And the first one was, we are not going to compete with our retailers by selling them ourselves. So we will not sell direct to consumers. Like, either you're a manufacturer or a retailer, and let's just not pretend to be both, because we can only be good at one thing. And we don't know retail like we know how to make things and sell things at wholesale. Uh, the second thing was, we said, we're just not going to sell online retailers. And it was interesting, because I've had 100 conversations with people who are like, this is the future. This is the wave of the future. And I think it is part of the future. I'm not sure it's a gigantic part of the luxury future, but at the end of the day, we're saying, we're just not going to do that. That's not going to be who we are. And let's go craft a niche for people that only sell brick and mortar retailers. And lastly, we said, we're not going to saturate markets with retailers. I mean, we've seen that. I don't think it's not a great long-term strategy for sure. But at the end of that whole thing, we said, we're going to be a brick and mortar brand. We don't want to be a retailer, but we want to find the best retailers that we can find. And we decided that we didn't want retailers to sell their hearts out, presenting our mattresses, letting customers experience them, and then have the consumer go buy something online from somebody that didn't put their heart and soul into supporting our brand. So,
I can
ultimately,
tell
we were.
you I can tell you this, Kurt. I'm sorry. I always interrupt
Okay,
people.
that's fine.
You should have known that before you came on, because if you watch
It's
any of
good.
my episodes, I interrupt everybody all the time. And I'm always very apologetic, but I keep doing it. So I apologize. But I have to tell you this, my first I've been at this for 39 years now. And my first 9 years in the industry, I worked as a RSA on the floor selling mattresses, and as a store manager who sold on the floor as well. So I know that the most disheartening thing in the world is to find a product that you really believe in, and it's a beautiful product. It delivers real meaningful benefits to the consumer, and you sink your teeth into it. You put your heart and your soul into it, and then they walk down the street and buy it for $50 less from somebody that didn't spend any time explaining. You spent 2 hours of your time
Right,
explaining it to
right.
them, and you lost the sale, and that
Yeah,
hurts and it
yeah,
demoralizes. And it doesn't take too much of that before you start to find out a new favorite product that you can make money on, because it's not
yeah.
going to be that thing that you just got beat on for a few dollars. And I
Well,
have to say
what's
this.
interesting, Pete? What I mean, a brand can't have value to everyone. The retailer, the retail sales associate, and the consumer, if it's available everywhere. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
If you look at luxury brands specifically, or great brands, they're just not available on every single corner. And to do luxury well, we knew that we had to do something different. We knew that we had to do something better. And as important in the Posh+Lavish story as it goes is, we knew we had to have something that was easier to explain and had a different value equation than current luxury mattresses. Because the luxury landscape for years, probably 20 years, we call a more strategy. Luxury for a long time in the United States just meant more coils, more foam, more fibers, more height of the mattress. But the value equation in all of that really was, we'll give you 50% more coils, 50% more foam, 50% more fiber, but we're going to ask you 3 times the price for a mattress. And consumers are smart. They look through it, and they literally, this is a function or a question about conversion. If you give them 50% more foam and 50% more coils, can you charge them 3 times as much for it? Well, I think some people you can, but you can't do that for the masses. So we said we don't think that's a great value equation. We're gonna start over and have different set of tenants. And our tenants were, we want to be something that was better. We want to be something that was different. We wanted something with a clear benefit that was easy to understand and something that added value.
And you've done that in spades. It's amazing the energy and the passion that retailers that carry your brand have for your
Yeah,
product. It's evident
yeah, they're awesome.
on YouTube. It's evident in any and every conversation, without exception. Everyone that I've ever talked to who is a dealer of yours loves your brand.
Yeah,
And
we love them too. They're amazing. We
congratulations.
have the best retailers. I mean, we have amazing retailers. I mean, they will take what we do and add steps and layers onto the top of it. And like we think what we've done is really good. What they've done to make it great is incredible.
Wow. You are a completely different cat than any other owner, principal of a company out there that I've ever met in my life. And
Well, thank you.
I got to tell you something, Kurt. This is an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here with you and to hear some of the inside scoop of what's going on with your company. Um, what do you see? You know, let's talk about just a couple of examples of telling a story. Uh, you know, let's talk about how do you explain the difference between rubber and polyurethane that is, not typical for our industry. How do you
Yeah,
do that?
that's a great question. Well, one of the short things that we always start with is we use rubber in our beds instead of polyurethane foam. And I mean, we just believe rubber is better because it doesn't take a dip and it doesn't take a set. And there's lots of things that you can say about rubber, but at the end of the day, its greatest sustainable benefit is that it doesn't dip and it doesn't take sets after use. And our favorite analogy to tell that story is actually tires and sofa cushions, because rubber tires do not take a set over time. Polyurethane foam sofa cushions do, and everybody knows that. Most everybody has a car and they all have a sofa at home, and they bought new ones of each and they know what goes on. And it's pretty simple. You can park a car overnight for 2 months, and when you go to drive down the car down the road, the tires did not take a set. They're still round, they bounce back. If you go sit on a
Yep.
new sofa for 2 months, even some of the best sofas that you can buy, and it's a function of density of foam, nothing else. If you sit on a new sofa for 2 months that's made out of polyurethane foam, those cushions will soften. And so we look at it in terms of value and say, an inch of rubber in a mattress costs approximately 10 times what an inch of polyurethane foam costs in a mattress. So if we ask a consumer to spend 3 times more on a mattress, a luxury mattress that uses a component that costs 10 times more, we don't think that's a hard conversation, especially when length of life and durability is the benefit. And we feel the
Yeah.
exact same way, by the way, on polyester fiber. We don't use polyester fiber in the top of our mattresses at all, but we use wool instead. And no different than rubber versus foam, wool is simply a better fiber than polyester is as a fiber. Most people that are in our business know that you can buy carpet that's made of polyester fibers, or you can buy carpet made out of wool fibers. And the whole world buys a lot of polyester carpet, but it's just not as good. Wool fibers will not flatten out in a carpet and take a set. Polyester fibers do. That's why polyester fiber carpet has a traffic pattern or a wear pattern after months of use. And the same value equation exists. Wool carpet generally costs 5 to 10 times more than carpet made from polyester fiber. So, not hard to ask 3 times more for a mattress that uses components that cost 5 to 10 times as much. And one of my favorite phrases is, we can establish value for our goods in our industry by looking outside of our industry. So what should a mattress that's made with wool and rubber price out at versus a mattress that's made out of polyurethane foam and polyester fiber? Well, I mean, we know the components, if you look at, general products in the marketplace, are 5 to 10 times as much. And the same thing's true for the fiber on the top of the bed too. We use Tencel facing as a fiber on our mattress ticking, and we do that instead of polyester or cotton. Tencel's better than polyester fiber. Again, it's a durability story. Tencel's fabrics won't break down over time and pill. And pilling's what happens when fibers break on the top of a fabric, whether it be in sheets, mattresses, or anything else, and you get those fuzzy little balls. Tencel just won't do that. And if you've ever slept on inexpensive polyester cotton blended sheets or just polyester sheets, you know that over time in washings that you get those little pill balls or those little fuzzy balls. And the material that's on the top of most mattresses are the same as polyester and polyester cotton blended sheets. It's the same components. And
Yeah.
and if you go look up the price of Tencel sheets, at Costco or in your dealership or anywhere else, Tencel sheets will cost about 5 times more than polyester cotton sheets. And there's tons of benefits to Tencel, but the reason why we use it is for you don't get a bunch of pilling on the top of the bed and have the mattress look old when it's not. So, same thing. I'm going to go back to value equation. We're going to ask you to spend 3 times as much for our luxury mattress as other people's luxury mattress, but it's made with rubber that's 10 times more expensive than foam, wool that's 5 times more expensive than polyester fiber, and Tencel facing, which is 5 times more expensive than polyester cotton blended sheets. So if we can do different, if we can do better, if we can do a benefit that's easy to understand, we establish a value. And we just think, to answer your question at the beginning, how did Posh+Lavish start? We said we want to be a luxury mattress with a different platform. We don't want to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. We don't want more coils. We don't want more fiber. We don't want more foam. We don't want more height in the bed. We just want a completely different platform. And one of the things that I should say too, and we always conclude this way because there's a natural place that latex rubber mattresses end up. And that's in a green space, in an organic space, in a natural space. And in the last 3 points that I just gave you in storytelling, we didn't have any of those in there. And it's not that those aren't important, because there are. And it's not that there's not a mattress or there's not a market for those benefits. But the luxury market is many, 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 many times greater than what the green or organic market is. And so we don't build a bed with those ingredients to be green, organic, sustainable, or anything else, although it's a pretty natural mattress. At the end of the day, we build them because we want to build the best luxury mattress that we can with the best materials that are available. And we think that when you do that, if you're standing on a store and say, why is that mattress $5,000 or why is that mattress $7,000? That a retail salesperson can say, well, let me give you just a couple examples. First of all, the mattress is made out of rubber instead of polyurethane foam. Second of all, the mattress has wool in it instead of polyester fiber on top. And lastly, the mattress has Tencel facing on the cover, and that it's for you don't end up with little pill balls on the top of it. And that's before you ever get to things like FR. I mean, we don't use antimony, we don't use boric acid, we don't use fiberglass. I mean, we use nothing like that in the cover. We just use wool. But at the end of the day, the point to be repeated is, we want to build a luxury mattress with really great stuff that's completely different than everybody else's luxury mattress, because we think the conversion rate for a retail salesperson to explain those simple benefits in terms of length of life is just so much greater.
That's awesome. Hey, fellas, if you're in the industry, you just got a doctorate.
You're kind.
Watch this and rewatch this and watch it again. And I've got to pay the bills, so I'm going to take 2 to 3 minutes to read a quick chapter out of my book, Sell a Million. Chapter 83, Differentiate or Die. Kurt, I swear I wrote this for you. You as a retailer should not just blindly follow the same manufacturers as your competitors. There are some really great little known products that give your store great margins and your customers a great product. Do your homework. Know all your competitors and the lines they carry. It's a lot of work, but it's work that must be done. Strive to have a store that looks different and feels different than your competitors. Most stores that you think are successful aren't. Go back and read that again. So don't copy them. Most stores that you think are successful aren't. So don't copy them. I'm not going to keep doing that, but I could. This entire book is about showing up differently than your competitors in your advertising, your merchandising, your display, your sales training, your service policy, and your procedures. Find an unmet need and fill that need for your customer. When the Ellman family sold IBC years ago, they left a gaping hole in the industry that was never filled. Their customers called them, imploring them to come back into the mattress business. When their non-compete was up, the Ellmans in 2010 came back into the mattress business. They more than filled that gap that no other company could fill. And the result in less than 5 years is Sherwood Bedding, and they are tracking for well over 100 million in sales. And by the way, since this book was written, they were sold to Temper Sealy. So they did it again. The magic happened again. But here's the most important part of what I just read, guys, and it's the last two sentences. There is a gap in your marketplace. Find that gap and fill it. Fill it better than any other store can. And guys, I don't usually do this, but I have to do it. Can't help it. If you don't see a Posh+Lavish dealer in your marketplace, you pick up the phone and you call Posh+Lavish right now and you get that line. Unless you're very, very low end, you should have this line. It's a great line. And not only that, it's a great company. So we were just talking about some stories that retail salespeople can tell and communicate outside of the industry, benefits to customers, and that to me is huge. And you, as a store owner, this is what you need to do. You need to find inspiration outside the industry too, because there's just too many people that are copying things that don't work. And that's why our industry hasn't grown the way it probably should have or could have. And I'm going to stop beating you up on that. But now I'm going to tell our listeners a little inside scoop. So I got on the phone with Jeff Giannakovo last night, who's a friend of mine, and he's a customer of mine. He owns Gardner's Mattress and More in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I asked him about Kurt, and I wanted to know something about Kurt that I didn't already know. I mean, I knew that he was credited with inventing the no flip, even though he would, share that with a bunch of other people. I know that he founded Pure Latex Bliss. I know that he's a principal of Posh+Lavish. And the thing that Jeff said was that Kurt knows how to be a partner better than any other manufacturer he's ever worked with. He listens. He is not egotistical, and he truly cares about what his dealers have to say. So I just have to do this little commercial for Kurt. And I know I just did a mini one, but I'm going to do another one because I just feel strongly about this. Before you give your money to a manufacturer who tried to put you out of business and they couldn't put you out of business, so now they want to be your partner, wake up. Just seriously, wake up. Here you have in Posh+Lavish a line that is not selling any of your competitors, will not. Probably when you call them, they probably won't sell you because there's probably somebody within, a few miles, and they're not going to put somebody on top of them. But if it's available, you should grab this line. I want you to tell us a story about the split head. I see the commercials just like all the customers see the commercials. And every time you see a Sleep Number commercial, all I see is a split head.
Yeah.
And one of the only other places I know I can get a split head is your company. But I want to hear from you where the inspiration came from, and I I guess the follow-up question would be, how's it going with the split head?
Yeah.
I think I know the
Yeah.
answer talking to your dealers.
Yeah. Split head is incredible. It's a great product. More important, it probably is one of the greatest margin opportunities for a retailer right now that exists. And it's not small, it's large. It's a big deal. I'll step back though a couple steps and tell you that split heads was not our idea. We, we only wish we were that smart, if you want to know the truth. Redmond Egart, who was a dealer of ours, called us and said to us, here's what you should guys should go out and do and why. And we thought, you know what, I think we've seen this on the commercial, but I'm not sure that we know a whole lot about it. So we went out and spent some money in marketing research and found out he was exactly right. I mean, it was probably one of the greatest insights that I've ever had being in the appliance and the mattress business, because it was so spot on something that was kind of invisible to the whole industry. At the end of the day, when we started researching this thing as a category or as a product feature, we found out Select Comfort had already completely paved the way for it. They were advertising it, they were promoting it, they were displaying multiple ones in their store. They were pitching every single customer that walked into a Select Comfort store a split head bed. They were absolutely killing it. And if all you do is shop mattress stores and not them, you didn't even know it. But the most fascinating part of split heads is that consumers instantly got what it was and why it was important to them. If you show a customer a split head mattress, they get it in a nanosecond. I mean, no explanation is almost required, although we can give you a pretty good pitch. They'd already established the value for it. They'd already established the benefit for it. And they had this simple value equation, which was brilliant. They said a split head mattress is the same price as two twin extra longs. And it just couldn't be any simpler than that. So, we went back to the different, better value test. And if you look at a split head mattress and if you display it with the tops in different positions, it just gets attention. I mean, immediately it gets attention. In fact, it gets more attention than two twin extra longs sitting side by side. Split heads are better because everybody loves the benefit of dual adjustability, but nobody wants to sleep in two separate beds. So split heads makes it for you have dual adjustability while you read or watch TV, but still have one bed. And the insight into this is awesome. People don't want to be intimate or sleep in two separate beds. I mean, this is not 1950. This is 2021, and people want to sleep in one bed, and they want to be intimate in one bed. And we always tell people, don't underestimate that. Although you don't really have to talk about it because they figure it out on their own if they see it. Split heads sell because of sex, because of intimacy. Nobody wants the crack down the middle of their bed. And they all want to have a king size bed to have sex on, but they all want to sleep or have the adjustability of different surfaces. And so it instantly answered the question. It's one bed with two adjustable heads. And it's incredibly easy to understand. If you see it, you believe it. And it really is that simple. So we always say, it's as simple as, do you want dual adjustability? Which nobody says no to that, by the way. Do you want dual adjustability in your bed to watch TV, to read, to do whatever you're doing? Nobody says no. And then you say, do you want one bed to get that done, or do you want two beds to get that done? And if it's two beds, then they go buy two twin extra longs. If it's one bed, which most of the time it is, that's the same price as two twin extra longs, and they get one bed. And they love it, and the business is great. It was not an easy thing to figure out. It took us a long time to figure out how to do it. But we make it in our entire all latex rubber collection. We make it in our latex and memory foam collection. And one of the things that we did, because we wanted to be bold about it, is we didn't want to only make it in king. We wanted to make it in queen and king. And, you know, the king is incredibly obvious. A lot of people would want to split head queen or king. What's interesting is probably about 20% of our business is in split head queen. And that always surprises people. So our standard issue display package today for a new retailer is a regular queen size bed sitting beside a split head queen bed, sitting beside a split head king bed. And that's incredibly simple display, but the difference that it makes is over the top. One of the things that we found is it's so easy to sell split head if you show it, and if you show it to a lot of people. But the other thing that's really important is if you display split head queen, guess what? You sell split head queen. And
Yeah.
it defies a little bit of logic for some people, but it doesn't make any difference whether it defies logic or not. It's taken off and it's become its own, brilliant thing. And like I said, I think in terms of a strategy to increase margin for most retailers, it's one of the simplest things that they can do. And most of the reason why is if a customer sees it and gets presented it, the chance that they get it is 99.9%, and the rest is history.
I was going to ask you to explain what a split head was, but you did. So there's no
Good.
reason to ask that question anymore. I'm going to do a quick commercial. Let me just take a moment to talk about Get Super Cereal, my production team and sponsors of this show. Get Super Cereal makes it easy for me to do this show. Years ago, I started my own podcast and I did everything. It was a lot of work. And the easiest part now is just showing up and doing the interview. The hard stuff for me was everything else. And Billy and Simon take care of everything else for me. So, um, my show turns up instantly, like 4 or 5 days after the show, on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the podcast platforms, and whatever new social media comes out, they'll have me on there. And guess what? I won't have to do any of the work. So if there's anybody out there and you're thinking of, you know what? I see Pete doing this show every week. I think I could do it. And I can tell you this, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. Call these guys. They make it easier for you. So just go online, getsupercereal.com. That's GETSUPER cereal, CEREAL.com. And, book a free call with these guys and find out what Billy and Simon can do for you. And that's the end of my commercial. Did I miss anything, guys? That's cute. Get Super Cereal logo. So listen, we promised at the very top of the show that we were going to talk about trends in 2021. And we've touched on some of that stuff, but listen, you have your ear close to the to the road in the industry. You know what's going on. This COVID thing was a gut punch to a lot of the dealers. They thought they were going out of business. Heck, I thought I was going out of business, Kurt. I said, what am I going to do now? I've done this my whole life. What am I going to do? I really was. I had a pity party for about 4 or 5 hours. And then I picked myself up and decided that my dealers needed somebody to help lead them through this. And that's part of my job as a rep, is to see the bigger picture and help lead. So anyway, we had a little bit of a gut punch. We thought we were going out of business. And then it was like a bonanza. It was literally so much business coming at us when we reopened that we didn't even know what to do with it. And then because of some of the things that were going on in the industry, even before COVID, but then some of the specific things that happened, we had shortages. And going into 2021, I think everybody's cautiously optimistic. We survived 2020, and we're hoping that that's the worst. Uh, and we're gonna, kind of see a gradual easing of things. But let me just ask you, you know, you have a lot of really great dealers. One of the things that I would say about your company, Kurt, is your quality of dealer is like
Yeah,
really well above the
yeah,
industry norm. The
yeah. It's amazing.
the kind of displays that these dealers have, the kind of people they are, what's important to them, how they serve their customer, they are a notch above. And
Yeah.
so what have you learned from them, and what do you see as the biggest trends in 2021?
Well, I think as 2021 goes, I think 2000 or 2020, the last 6 months were amazing for luxury, and I think for the
Yeah,
next 6 months, it's probably exactly the same. I don't know exactly how the year's going to play out yet, but I think the first 6 months of 2021 are going to be exactly what we saw for the last 6 months of 2020, and that was incredible.
yeah,
Um, I think in terms of the retailer question, I still think the biggest trend really is a thought or a strategy that says, how do I set myself apart from brick and mortar competition? How do I set myself apart from direct consumer online competition? How do I set myself apart from the other guys in town? I
yeah,
I literally think that as a trend, that as a thought is just something that everybody has to think about every single year. And it's because things are changing. Things are changing a lot. Who owns
yeah,
what and where they are. And, every single year, it doesn't change a little bit, it changes a lot. And we have a lot of dealers. And to your point, we have amazing dealers. Like, we have people that take care of their consumer like nobody's business. We have people that they're just not afraid to show something different. They're not afraid to ask for a bigger ticket. They're not afraid to jump on, we call it the split head bandwagon. But we introduced that, and the next thing you know is everybody wanted to change out a floor sample or two. Like, it's just overnight, because they're forward thinking people, and they were looking for something that somebody else doesn't have, and they were looking for something that they could go camp in, that was different and could make them money. uh, but I think the people that answer those three questions, again, those are going to be the people that thrive. But it is a question that has to be readdressed every single year. We all have to do something different than our competitors. I mean, if we don't, I think that life is hard. If asking the question, how do I separate myself from other brick and mortar? How do I separate myself from direct to consumer? How do I set myself from online guy? If we think that's a hard question, try to compete having the same brands as everybody else does all over town and being advertised on the internet with three different deals. I mean, it's just a great question that has to be answered all the time. But we have to be different. Everybody has to have unique offerings, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a retailer. We have to have different displays, and we have to have different presentations. Um, like, if you walk into a retail store and miss that they have a split head mattress, it's because it wasn't left in the right position. I mean, it
yeah,
has to be in a position that when you walk over, you're like, what is that? And the minute you get
exactly.
5 words out of your mouth, they're like, oh, I get that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
And we also have to build a different experience that's best for them, for they can figure out the investment that needs to be made. The mattress business, for the 20 years that I've been in it, is literally an ask for business. I mean, if we show people what's more expensive and let them experience it on their own, they typically will buy better goods. And in the minute that we don't show it, the minute we don't ask for it, the minute we don't let them experience it, then not only is it a commission loss, is it a sale, gross dollars loss, but it's consumer loss too. They're not going to have as good of mattress. The other thing that I would say about this year is, I think this is going to be a year of the mattress. And we've been saying this for the last couple months, but really in the past decade, maybe a little bit longer than that, as an industry, and I'll start with, this was appropriate. As an industry, we spent so much time selling adjustable bases and mattress protectors and pillows that that I think there's a little bit of we've undersold the mattress too. And I'm not sure that that's true for everybody. In fact, I'm sure that it's not true for everybody. But we go to great lengths to sell a couple pillows and to sell a mattress protector and an adjustable base. And there was always a mattress that could have been upgraded too. And I think because we just have less shiny objects that compete for our attention in all of these accessory spaces, that there's going to be a renewed focus on the mattress. And the reason why I think it's happening is 2020 was such a challenging year for people in terms of the availability of merchandise. And so literally salespeople might have had 50 beds on a floor, but they might have been only able to get 12. And so you quickly get back to the thought that, you know what, if I can only get 12, those 12s are going to be the ones that I'm going to sell. And I'll craft a story to sell those 12s because I don't have everything else. And that's what I can get. And that's what I can get in a week or 2 weeks. And I think it made everybody realize, you're like, holy cow, you know what? I can sell what I want to sell with the story that I want to use because I didn't have a choice in 2020. And I think as people head into 2021, I think there's still going to be, supply chain issues. But more important than that, I think there's going to be a whole lot of people that stretch themselves to say, I can sell a much different, a much better, a much, you fill in the blank mattress than I thought, because last year I had to, and it worked anyhow. And so I think there's an improvement of salesmanship skills that happened out of raw, it was just the mother of necessity. If you can't get stuff, you sell the stuff that you have, and the next thing you know is you just get better at selling. And nobody would want to go repeat 2020 for what it was. But at the end of the day, you left learned, and that's been big. It's
Yeah.
interesting, 2020 was such a fascinating year because in your home, there were a whole lot more people that spent more time at home than ever. There were people that
Yeah.
didn't take vacations, that slept at home more. There were business travelers that never jumped on an airplane and went anywhere, or rarely did. So they spent so much time in their home and on their floors and on their carpet and on their furniture and in their mattress. And by the way, the whole pandemic thing, I mean, there's been studies and studies written already about how people slept during the pandemic. And so you have a whole lot of people that didn't sleep well, spent more time in their home than ever before, really ever before.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of it was on their mattress. And they were so much more open to a better mattress story this year, than they ever have been. And that stretch for retail sales associates to stretch consumers to get things they wouldn't have bought, or to have them invest in things that they wouldn't have bought 2 years ago or 5 years ago, was very, very different. And I think there were huge lessons learned. And that's not a theory on our part. That's just listening to retail sales associates say, you know what? Like, I can't believe what I sold this year. I can't believe the tickets that I sold this year. I can't believe the customer that I saw this year. And it's not because they moved into a neighborhood where there were $5 million homes. It literally is, they were doing something different in the same store that were always in, and the year looked different because of it. So I think, different products, larger tickets, better products, that's the outcome of all of it.
That's awesome.
Thank
So
you.
I have to dive into this just very quickly.
Okay.
So you're as a retailer, you hear this, differentiate. And so I'm going to just walk you through a couple of things really quickly, and I'm not going deep into them. And if you want to go deep into them, call me or jump on my website, and we'll talk there. But put yourself in your customer's shoes. You're a customer. You haven't been in the market for 15 or 20 years, even though we want you to be in the market every 8 to 12 years, but you haven't been in the market for 15 or 20 years. What does your customer see when they see an ad from you? What does that ad make them feel? When they walk into your store, what do they feel when they see your display? When they're greeted by your salesperson, what do they feel? Think these things through. Think through how you're going to service the customer. Think through how the buying experience feels to your customer. and figure out a way to give your customer a better buying experience than your competitor, and you win. And a big part of that, sandwiched in between the display and the sales training, is merchandising. And the gap that is on most people's floors is they do not show split heads, and there's millions and millions of dollars being poured into split heads right now. If you don't have a split head, you're missing the boat. You're just absolutely missing the boat. And if you don't have rubber, a different technology that's truly better, that's chemical free, that is better 100 different ways, you're missing the boat. So with that, our time is up. Any last words, my friend? I
No,
feel like
thank
I've
you,
known you
Pete.
for 20 years.
Nah, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And as a shout out again to Redmond, to Jeff. I mean,
Great
these are
guys,
brilliant
huh?
guys. You know what? I mean, what we get to do, we get to do because of what our retailers do, and we don't forget that. We don't ever forget that. I mean, every single consumer buys a bed from a retail associate that works at one of the retailers that we sell. And if it wasn't for retail sales associates selling our mattress or presenting our mattress today and the retailer that picked up the line, we wouldn't get a chance to do any of it. And we appreciate that. And we appreciate what you're doing too. I think this stuff is great.
Thanks, Kurt. Have a
Sure.
great vacation. Kurt came to us. I found out that I encroached on his vacation, so I feel horrible about it. But thank you,
It's when I
Kurt.
had
Thank you
free time.
for
We're great.
and you know what? I just have to say one last thing, and I know I'm carrying on here. In 1 minute, I have to say this. You know, Kurt's company and his partner, Steve, their company isn't just about mattresses and a great night's sleep. It's about children who are disadvantaged in poor countries who actually receive medical treatment and operations that they couldn't otherwise ever in a million years have. Some of these operations are life saving and others are life altering. But Jeff Janakovo from Lancaster at Gardner's Mattress and More told me one of the things that him and his staff feel the best about is that they are helping save and change lives. When they sell a Posh+Lavish mattress, they're not only changing the life of the consumer that buys it, they're changing the life of a poor child in an underdeveloped country with a medical condition that's severe, and they're changing lives. So thank you for being who you are, Kurt, and thank
Thank
you
you.
for being what our industry should be all about, and to a large degree is about. But that is not something that we discuss. So if he looks a little embarrassed, I understand, and I'm sorry I broadsided you with that, but
That's all.
I had to. My
Thank you.
my heart
Well,
my heart tells me I had to do that.
well, thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. And with that, guys, we are saying goodbye, and we'll look forward to you on the next episode.
Great. Thanks again, Pete.
Thank you, Kurt.